He had been sending roses to the same grave for 9 years. White roses, always the same florist, always the second Saturday in April. The card said the same thing every time. He had been writing it so long he no longer had to think about it. This year, when he called to place the order, the woman on the line paused. "Mr. Callahan," she said carefully, "someone already came in. Yesterday. With the same order. I assumed you'd sent her." He had not sent anyone. Martin Callahan was 63 years old and had been retired for 2 years from a civil engineering firm where he'd spent most of his adult life calculating load tolerances and reviewing site surveys. He was precise by habit. He liked things to have explanations. His wife, Clara, had died 9 years ago in April, 3 weeks before their 30th anniversary. They had met at 22 at a fundraiser neither of them had wanted to attend. By the end of the night he'd already asked her to dinner. She'd said yes before he finished the question. The white roses were her idea. She'd told him once that yellow roses meant friendship, red roses meant passion, and white roses meant something that lasted beyond both. She didn't explain further. She didn't need to. When she got sick, the first thing she made him promise was that he wouldn't make her passing into a spectacle. No ceremony, no gathering, just the two of them, when it was time, and then whatever came after. He had kept the promise. He visited the grave 3 or 4 times a year, sometimes more in the early years, less now. But the roses, in April, on the second Saturday, those he had never missed. He set the phone down and sat for a moment. Then he called the florist back and asked if the woman had left a name. She had. The name was Diane Marsh. The florist had it on the payment record, a debit card, an email address. She hesitated before sharing it, but Martin was calm and clear about why he was asking, and the florist, who had known him for years, gave him the address. He composed a message that night. He rewrote it 4 times. The final version was 9 sentences long. He explained who he was. He explained the roses. He said he wasn't upset, which was true, but he needed to understand the connection. He pressed send at 10:40 in the evening and went to bed without expecting a reply before morning. She replied at 11:15. The message was short. She apologized for any confusion. She said she had known Clara. She said she would understand if he didn't want to meet, but if he did, she was available whenever he chose. She included a phone number. He called the next morning. Diane Marsh was 51. She had a careful voice, the kind that sounds like it learned to be careful over time. She said she lived about 40 minutes outside the city, that she'd moved there 7 years ago. She said she'd been sending the flowers for 6 years. 6 years, Martin said. I missed the first 3, she said. I didn't know about the roses until Clara told me. And then after she died, it took me a while to. She paused. I didn't think I had the right at first. He asked how she had known Clara. There was a silence that told him the answer was not simple. They agreed to meet the following Thursday. A coffee shop midway between them. Martin arrived first, took a table near the window, and ordered nothing. He was not nervous exactly. He was something harder to name, the feeling of standing at a door you can't see through. Diane arrived on time. She was a small woman with dark hair starting to go gray at the temples. She shook his hand with both of hers and thanked him for coming. They ordered coffee. They made the small necessary exchanges people make when they have nothing yet in common. Then she set her cup down and looked at him steadily. Did Clara ever mention the Wednesday group? She asked. He said no. For the last 14 months of Clara's life, from the diagnosis through the final weeks, she had been attending a gathering on Wednesday evenings at a community center not far from where they lived. Martin had known about it. Clara told him it was a support group for people dealing with illness. He had been glad. She came home from those evenings quieter sometimes, but lighter in a way he couldn't fully describe. He hadn't pressed. It was not a support group, Diane told him. Not in the way he'd understood it. Clara had started the group herself, 3 months after her diagnosis, at the suggestion of a social worker she'd met during an early treatment appointment. The group was for women in crisis, women dealing with financial collapse, estranged families, situations that had become dangerous at home. Clara had reached out to 2 organizations, arranged the space, and run the meetings herself, every Wednesday, for over a year. Martin sat very still. She never told me, he said. I know, Diane said. She told us she hadn't. She said. She stopped and looked at her cup. She said you were already carrying enough. She didn't want to add to it. And she said it was the one thing that was entirely hers. He thought about the Wednesday evenings. The way Clara sometimes came home and went straight to the bath without saying much. The way she'd be quiet through dinner and then, by 10 o'clock, start talking. About something unrelated, always something unrelated. He had assumed it was the illness. He had assumed a great many things. There had been 7 women in the group at different points. Diane had been one of them. She came in March of the year Clara died, referred by a women's services organization after a situation at home had made staying no longer safe. She had no money she could access, no family nearby, no plan for what happened next. She sat in a circle of folding chairs at a community center and listened to a woman with a terminal diagnosis calmly describe the resources available to her and ask what she needed most. "I thought she was going to tell me to count my blessings," Diane said. "That's what people do." She didn't. She just asked what I needed. What she needed was a plan. Clara helped her build one. Over 3 months, on Wednesday evenings and occasionally by phone, they worked through it together. Housing, finances, the legal steps she hadn't known were available to her. By the time Clara's health declined and the group quietly dissolved, Diane had moved. She had a job, she was still here. "I never got to thank her properly," Diane said. "She died before I could. And I didn't know how to reach you. I didn't think I should. But I remembered the story about the roses. She told it to us once, the white roses, what they meant, the second Saturday in April. It took me 3 years to find the right florist. And then I kept going." Martin looked out the window for a moment. "She talked about you all the time," Diane said. "Not to fill space. She just loved you. She talked about you like you were the fixed point." He drove home slowly. He didn't take the highway. He took the back roads he used when he needed time to arrive somewhere. He kept returning to the same image. Clara on a Wednesday evening, 17 months before she died, sitting in a circle of folding chairs at a community center. Doing what she had always done, which was find the thing that needed doing and do it without announcing herself. He had been home those evenings. He had made dinner. He had left a plate covered on the stove for when she came back. He had been so certain he understood how she was spending those hours. He thought about what it means to know someone. He and Clara had been together for 32 years. He had believed, without examining the belief, that he knew most of what there was to know. Not everything, people are not transparent, and he was not naive. But the important things, he had believed he knew the important things. What he understood now, sitting in traffic on a Tuesday afternoon with the car growing warm, was that he had known her, and still there had been this. Not a betrayal, not a secret kept from shame. A room she'd kept for herself in the last chapter of her life, where she went to be useful in a way that had nothing to do with being sick. A place where she could still be Clara before she was a patient, before she was a wife whose husband was doing his best to hold everything together. He had been doing his best. She had been doing hers. Separately, in parallel, on Wednesday evenings, he was not angry. He was not hurt in the way he might have expected. He was something else. Something that sat in the chest without resolving. He drove the back roads and let it stay there, unnamed, all the way home. He called Diane twice more over the following weeks. The first time to ask questions he hadn't thought to ask over coffee. The second time he wasn't sure why, he just called. They talked for almost an hour. She told him more about the group, about the other women, about what those Wednesday evenings had been like. He told her things about Clara she hadn't known, the early years, where they'd traveled, the house they'd almost bought in a different city before deciding to stay. In June he visited the grave on a weekday, not the second Saturday. He brought white roses anyway, the same kind, and stood there for a while without saying anything in particular. He thought about what the florist had told him, that 2 separate orders, identical in every detail, had come in within 24 hours of each other. That the florist had assumed they were connected, and had been right, in every way that mattered. He thought about Clara starting something in the middle of her own ending. Building something, keeping it running, not because anyone asked her to and not because it made the dying easier, but because it was who she was. She had been sick and she had been tired and she had been, in those last months, in pain that she rarely mentioned. And on Wednesday evenings she had sat in a room with women who needed someone steady, and she had been steady for them. He didn't change his ritual. The second Saturday in April, he still calls the florist, still places the same order. But now he asks, before he hangs up, whether anyone else has come in. This past April, they both had